坚持啊啥的，我有时候觉得喜剧不需要坚持，喜剧就需要放弃，你不好笑你就下去，因为
Hello happy writers, I'm Steve Sommin and welcome to my channel. Now, in my last video I talked about the hero's journey and I gave you a task of going off and doing research for story structures such as the hero's journey, the monomyth, story circle and the 3-act play. Now that combined with your research on archetypes, I'm sure you have lots of ideas about the world, the story, your characters and things like this. With that in mind, let's take that research and that planning and the ideas and start building something that's actually going to be useful for your book now. Before we do that, please hit the subscribe button, press the bell so that you get notifications every time I drop a video, and it'll really help my channel as well. We're going to do two things today. We're going to write a profile for a character and we're going to write a profile of the world that you're building. Because you are going to be building a world, it's an essential part of storytelling. That said, let's start with the characters. Number 1, choose your characters. You've got to choose your characters and you've got to choose wisely. Now, the one thing that I'm going to say is, you've probably heard the expression, kill your darlings. Well, the first character that you're going to kill is going to happen now, because there's one character that you really don't want to use, and that is the one that you have created that is basically an idealized version of you. You do not want you as a character in your story. If you have you as one of the characters in your story, or an idealized version of you, then there's going to be too much bias and it's going to be obvious that it is just a fantasy for your own persona. Once you've killed that character off, scrap, gone, don't need, yay! I know we don't want to kill ourselves, but trust me, by doing this, you're going to make the impact on your story so much stronger with the characters that you're going to choose. Now, if you've got ideas about the world and the kind of story that you want to tell, then you've got an idea of maybe 3 or 4 main characters. We're going to concentrate on them first. Number 2, give the characters flaws. We need the flaws because the flaws help us to create conflict. Conflict is an essential element of storytelling. So, what kind of flaws do you choose? Well, that is entirely up to you. What you need to consider is what the character's main purpose in the story is, what they're likely to be doing, and how their flaw is going to conflict with what they're required to do. So you've got an idea about some flaws that you want to introduce. It could be like shyness, hostility, aggressiveness, and things like this. Bigotry, whatever the flaws are. You may want to consider giving your characters more than one flaw, say 2 flaws, a major and a minor flaw, especially with the hero, because if your book turns into a serial, then you need a minor flaw that needs to be fixed over the series of the books to get to the end. You may also think about giving the character not just the flaws, but a strength, something that they can do or something about their personality that gives them an advantage in given situations. Number 3, attribute archetypes. Okay, so you've got these characters and you know what their flaws are, you kind of understand who they are, but you need to think about what archetypes do you want to give them. So even if you've got a hero, you might have a hero who is the orphan, so there's 2 archetypes there. Using the research that we've done on archetypes, and we know that we can attribute more than one archetype to a character, you need to think about distributing archetypes across your characters. And if you've got 3 or 4, I wouldn't go more than 3 archetypes on a single character. Otherwise, the character can become a little too conflicted and a little unbelievable. Number 4, give them a history. The easy part has been done now. Well, I say the easy part. I know it's not really easy. This is the most difficult part because you've got to think about the archetypes and the flaws and the strengths, and you need to think about what kind of personal history the character has that would actually develop these traits. We can use a mixture of nature and nurture to actually fill out the history, but it is important that the history does explain how the character is the way they are. Number 5, write a profile. Now that we know who the characters are, what their attributes are, what their strengths are, what their flaws are, we need to actually look at their history and we need to create a profile. A profile is not just their backstory. A profile explains how all their traits come together and shape the way that they view the world. The most important part of a profile is that it explains how their traits like their archetype and the flaws and the strengths, actually work together and affect their decision-making skills, because that's going to be an important part of how they interact with each other. And if you can, at this stage, try to think about the relationships between the characters. Are they related? Are they friends? Do they know each other well? Or do they barely know each other if they only just met? These are all important things that you want to have in your profile, because it's going to shape the relationships they have. Now that you've created this profile for your character, you understand their traits and you understand their decision-making process, so you need to set the limits, their moral limits. Where do they draw the line? Everybody has a line. Where is theirs? The question is, what's the point beyond which they will not go? That's actually going to help you out a lot with your story. So basically, you're thinking about the limits of what the person will or will not do. That's enough for the profile so far. Now we're going to have a look at the world itself. Now, you've got lots of ideas about the world. Visualize the world. Now, visualizing the world doesn't mean just write down everything you can think of about the world. Now, I understand that you may not be able to draw. I mean, I can't draw for toffee, but it doesn't stop me from actually creating a map, drawing the weapons, drawing the machines, the transport and stuff like this, so that I can actually see the world that I want to design. Get your pen and paper out, start drawing pictures, even rough pictures, even if it's matchstick men and whatever, even if it's just a few lines that you understand what it represents. It doesn't necessarily need to be a perfect representation of what you're trying to draw. Just remember, this is for you, not for other people. Set the rules. Every world that you build has rules. Just like we set the limits on our characters, we need to set the rules for the world. So we're going to have lots of different rules. So you're going to have rules for the society that the society is supposed to follow. These could be laws. They could be mandates, whatever you want to call them. You also need to have rules for the physical world itself. Does it follow the same physics as our normal universe? Is it based in the real world? Is it based on an off-world? What are the physics there? Do you have magic? Do you have special abilities? What are the rules around them? How were they created? Where do they draw their power from? These are all rules that you need to set for your world. They need to be quite fixed so that you know the limitations of the things that can be done in the story that you're telling. What's the population? I know this seems like a no-brainer. I mean, if you're writing it in the modern world, then the population of the planet is like 7 billion. If you're not, you need to seriously consider just how many people there are in this make-believe world of yours. Maybe your story is set in a city and you don't know what's beyond the city, but you still need to know a rough idea of how many people there are. That way you know how likely they are to be bumping into other people. It's a really important question to answer. The world flaws. I would suggest more than one flaw, just because you may want to move on to do a series of books. If you've got a flaw in the world, then it could be the thing that the hero is trying to fix. It's a good conflict to have there. The flaw working against the hero and the hero trying to fix the flaw. Write the profile. Just like we do with the characters, each character has its own profile. The world has its own profile, so that we can understand the history, how they got to the point where they are. Maybe it'll outline all the flaws, the rules, the society, and it may even give us some ideas about the major obstacles that the characters are going to have to face. Okay, so this is how I write my profiles. You don't have to do it the same, but you need to think about what kind of things do you want to see in the profile that are going to help you to write your story. There we have it. This is just my opinion of how to write profiles for your characters in your world and how to actually start building your characters in your world. Obviously, if you can think of a better method that suits you better, then fantastic. If not, then I'm really glad if this can help you. Don't forget that when you finished your profile, save it to the planning file, okay? Because this is actually part of the planning. So you save it to your planning file and don't forget to email it to yourself. You need to have that backup. And when you finish this process, we're going to be at the point where we can actually start looking at and planning the story and building that outline. And remember, you are gonna be a writer. If you like this content and you want to see more, please like, share and subscribe and press the bell to get notifications on the next video I drop. Until next time, bye.